wake up and just breathing. And I'm grateful for my coffee. I really like my lattes, although we are going to talk about that today with our guest about how healthy that is. And really depends on how I make my latte, right? Like how much extra stuff I put in my latte. Talking about Thanksgiving, I've brought along a vegan, because my husband's vegan, pumpkin pie. No, I did not make it, but it smells so good, and makes me kind of want to like throw it in someone's face, like my own, but I won't. But I'm excited tonight because our guest is going to be talking about a healthy alternative to the typical pumpkin pie. But my story tonight, before we start, is about this and stovetop stuffing, because for many of you know, I'm born in Toronto, Canada, and I moved here to Chicago 30 years ago. I'm a dual citizen. So our first Thanksgiving, my husband and I put together this fantastic Thanksgiving meal for the two of us, including homemade healthy stuffing. And he came home from work and looked at the table and he said, "This looks great," looked at the stuffing and said, "Wait, is it stovetop?" And I said, "No, it's actually a healthier version." And he said, I grew up having stovetop stuffing. He was very insistent upon the stovetop stuffing. He ran out the door searching all over for stovetop, which, you know, the day of Thanksgiving, you think there's any on the shelf. It's like with COVID with the toilet paper, it was clear, gone. So he was gone for about an hour. I don't know. He went to every single Walgreens, every single Jewel, until he finally found a stovetop. And I've been making stovetop, but that's for him. And isn't it interesting? He has a stovetop with the vegan meal. But regardless of that, we all eat differently and we all have different feelings about eating, different foods that we eat, what is healthy, what isn't, what makes our body feel good, what doesn't. And I'm really honored that our guest tonight, Melissa Deely, is here to join us because I've worked one-on-one with her. I've done the detox that she will talk a little bit about tonight. I just felt so good, just detoxing, cleansing my body, and just discussing with her foods that work with me and my body and foods that, you know, drag down my energy. So, Melissa, welcome again to Grateful Goddesses.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here again, and happy Thanksgiving to all the Americans in the audience.
Thank you so much. So you're with Your Guided Health Journey, which is behind you, the beautiful banner, but you've also done some more stuff since we last spoke. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Since we last spoke, I have been very honored to receive an award, actually, and that was the Quality Care Award from the Business from the Heart organization, which was created in Canada by Your Holistic Earth. So yes, very honored to have received that award amongst many other esteemed nominees. And I also have done additional training with my mentor, Dr. Stephen Cabral of the Integrative Health Practitioner Organization. And he is somebody who at the age of 17 was diagnosed with 3 different chronic illnesses, basically couldn't get out of bed, and was told by mainstream medicine that, sorry, this is as good as it gets. Here's some drugs to help you cope with the pain, but there's nothing we can do. And he had a little pity party. He admits that. And then he decided, no, this isn't my life. This isn't what I was put on this planet to do. I need to figure this out. And he set out on a mission to discover the best form of medicine in the world. And over the course of the next 10 years, he completely healed himself while training in India and Sri Lanka on Ayurvedic medicine, training in Beijing on traditional Chinese medicine, coming back to North America and training as a naturopathic doctor, as well as studying orthomolecular medicine and bioregulatory medicine. So after all of that, not only did he fully heal himself from something that he was told you could not be healed from, he discovered that there is no one best form of medicine, but you can take the best of these different forms of medicine and put them together in a really integrative approach to guide your own healing or someone else's healing. And from that, that's what he has continued to do. And not long after that, he opened his clinic, and it wasn't long before he had a year-long wait list. And he's like, okay, that's not serving people. People that are struggling today don't want to be told you can't see me for a year. I can't clone myself, but what I can do is I can train other people to do the work that I do, read the labs that I use in order to discover the imbalances in the body that are causing this chronic illness, and then use my protocols that I've now used on a client base of over 250,000 clients in order to help other people heal and serve more people. And so that's exactly what he did. He started that organization in late 2019. I completed my training in 2020, August 2020, but recently earned the right to participate in additional training with him as one of 10 integrative health practitioners that earned that right. So that was 2 days of phenomenal training that I can't share any more on until the end of Q1 of 2022, when all of these additional things will be rolled out by him. That will then give us integrative health practitioners more tools and our clients more tools on their health journey. So it's really exciting what is coming soon.
That's phenomenal. So our viewers that are watching, if you would like to learn more about Melissa as well, you can tune into Grateful Goddesses, because I did interview her, I think it was last year, and it was right earlier.
Yeah.
And I believe it was right after I had done the detox. So I had, which was great because I was able to actually go, like actually feel what was happening to my body and talk to you about all the concerns and questions that I had. But I do want to share with some people who maybe are just meeting you tonight or seeing you on the streaming channels. How did you get into this? What prompted you to start your guided health journey?
As with many healers, it's the experience that we've gone through ourselves. And I was in the corporate world 6.5 years ago. The last 6.5 years have absolutely flown by. I was 24 years with one company in a career that I loved until big fish bought little fish. And I was told that I was no longer needed, given an hour to clear out my desk and no word of thanks. And in that moment, I knew 3 things. I was never working for someone else again. 2, whatever I did next had to be more of service to humanity and the planet, because I was in tourism, and that's a really fun industry, but hey, helping people have a better vacation isn't really of service to the greater planet and humanity. So I wanted to change that now. And thirdly, I had no idea what the heck I was going to do, but I was absolutely open to being guided, and guided I was. So first off, later that year, I found a company that specialized in brain supplementation. And that was my first aha, because I realized, well, I use my brain 24/7, and no one ever told me that I could do more to help the health of my brain. And I knew there was near epidemic Alzheimer's and dementia out there, and I didn't know why. I just knew that was a reality. But I also knew that my grandmother was 99 years old, living at home by herself, fully cognitively functioning and able to care for herself. So I knew I had good genes, but was that enough to take me down my grandmother's path versus the path of so many others that were going down? And I started thinking about her life and comparing it to mine. And she was born in Christchurch, New Zealand, in the bottom corner of the world, before all of the toxins that were introduced to our world post-World War II, growing all their own food on the property. And I was raised in Tokyo, Japan in the 70s at the height of manufacturing plants spewing out toxins. So right there, I knew that I was behind the 8 ball, because I was way more toxic than she was. And I didn't know what that meant yet, but I knew that was a starting point. And so I started learning about the brain. I started learning about the effect of toxins on the brain and on our body and overall health. And about 4 months after starting to use these nutritional supplements to support my brain, my oldest daughter got a concussion in her first soccer game of her grade 12 season. And she was in no state to go to her appointments and then come home and tell me what the practitioners had said so that I could hold her accountable in her healing journey. And so I was going with her for my own learning, but also to support her in her healing journey. 2 months after that, I'm driving to Vancouver, and I got a phone call that my younger daughter had a suspected concussion from her grade 8 gym class. And I literally looked out the windshield of my car up at the heavens and said, really? This is how you show me my path? Stop taking out my children.
Mm-hmm.
Now I had two very different concussions, really good nutrition for the brain, and I was going to both sets of appointments. And that was my second aha. What do other people do that haven't got a mom who isn't working to guide their healing journey? And so that really was the start of your guided health journey, because I realized there was a gap in the market in terms of people's ability to heal. When we're trying to figure it all out on our own, it's stressful. We don't know if we're doing it right. We don't know if the information we're finding and researching and looking up is even the right information. And that keeps us in the stress state. And when we're in that stress state, the body doesn't heal. How much better would it be to instead be guided on your healing journey, be able to relax and trust in the process, working with someone who knows how to help you heal, because in that state, the body truly can heal. So that inspired me to go back to school, and I became a health coach. And as I finished up my health coaching certification, I was introduced to Dr. Stephen Kerprall and his integrative health practitioner organization. And I felt like he was my brother from another mother, because I was already talking about toxins and your toxic load, and I was referring to them as overflowing trash cans. Well, he has a book called The Rain Barrel Effect, which is the same idea. When your rain barrel's full and it starts overflowing, that is when your health starts to go sideways. And so I jumped in with both feet, because having the power of functional medicine labs and the science behind that to truly show us where our body's out of balance, as well as understanding what toxicity levels are doing to our bodies, we can change people's health outcomes exactly as he experienced himself. And we have so much more control over our health than we've been led to believe. And that diagnosis of chronic illness or dis-ease does not have to be a life sentence. Mm-hmm. And when you can work with the right practitioners that can run the labs that show you how to bring your body back into balance, you can overcome much of that, because when the body's in balance, it will heal itself. So it's incredibly powerful work, and I absolutely love it. And now with the science of epigenetics, which is very new science, it's only 5 to 7 years old, we know that it's not just your genes that dictate your health outcomes. We used to believe that, but it's your genes plus your lifestyle and the environment you create inside your body that dictates your health outcomes. And this environment that you're creating inside your body is weighted at 90 to 95% of that equation, which means you have a choice. The choice to create a body that is inhospitable to disease. And in doing so, you're lowering the inflammation in the body, and you're lowering that chance of your cells triggering your genes to turn on the disease. That's not automatic. It's the environment that you create that triggers the cells to turn on disease.
So let's talk about some of the myths, because there's so much information out there. And by the way, people who are watching on Facebook or Instagram or other services, if you'd like to join in on this conversation and be part of the live audience, you can register at pulver.com, and then you can join in and you can ask questions. I also want the people who are here tonight live, if you have questions and would like to ask directly to Melissa, to type them in the chat, and we can unmute you as well. Okay, now I know we all have different opinions about different things, and obviously consult your doctor. Like, this isn't, this is just you and me having a conversation, but I have some myself that I was looking through. So eating fat makes you fat. Fat meaning butter, heavy cream, cheese, fat on meat, fat.
Yeah, so this stems from some false logic that was introduced back in the 80s when governments looked around and were concerned about the health of the first world nations and watching people steadily gain weight, become obese, go down the path of type 2 diabetes and heart disease. And so they wanted to put a stop to that and help people become healthier. But unfortunately, the process they used was highly flawed. They believed that if you didn't want to be fat, you shouldn't eat fat. It was as simple as that. However, our digestive system and our body is so much more nuanced and complicated than that it completely backfired. And what's really interesting is that it's only in the English-speaking world where the word fat in our food is the same as the word for fat on our body. So this problem really only arose in countries that speak English. So that was the advent of the low fat, no fat craze. And everybody was told, if you want to be healthy, eat low fat, eat no fat. Well, the initial response to that was, of course, the food industry took the fat out of the foods and people started buying it. And
I remember eating an entire box of the Snackwell cookies thinking, and Lauren's nodding, because I thought, oh, I can eat the whole box.
Yeah, exactly. So now there's no fat in it. So we think that it's totally fine to eat the whole thing. So we're overeating. But also, even before that phase, the food didn't taste good. So we got this idea in our head that food tasted good, healthy food tasted like cardboard. It didn't taste good because the fat was contributing towards the flavor of the food. So now the food industry obviously wants us to keep buying their food. So what do they do in order to make it taste better so we'll buy more? They add sugar. So our low fat, no fat foods now had quite high amounts of sugar being added to them, and we were still being told to eat them. And now they tasted good, so we wanted them, and sugar is quite addictive to humans, so we were wanting even more. And 20 years later, 30 years later, we're seeing our rates of heart disease, diabetes, obesity higher than ever because this completely backfired. Our brain is made up of fat and water. Our brain needs fat. It needs water in order to function well. And our digestive system and our body need fat as well. We need fat, we need carbohydrates, and we need protein. We need fiber. But there are good fats and bad fats.
That's right. I was just going to say, because my son was, for a while, I'm forgetting what it's called now, but he was adding butter to his coffee. I know it's
ghee.
No, he was actually adding
a certain type of butter.
Grass-fed butter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm totally spacing on what it was. Anyways, there's a term for this kind of coffee.
The Bulletproof coffee?
Yes, Bulletproof.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
And I was just like, it was like, this much butter. And I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Like, just, I understand the idea that it's good to have fat, but not a lot of fat. That can be too extreme.
Right. So there's always that balance. And so what I say is at any given meal, we want 1 to 2 tablespoons of fat at each meal. So breakfast, lunch, dinner. Okay. And that's for somebody who's in a weight maintenance mode. If you're in a weight loss mode, then maybe you need a little bit less. If you're in a weight gain mode, then you can have a little bit more. But you're not having half a cup of fat with each meal. You're going to have half a cup of protein, perhaps, but 1 to 2 tablespoons of a good quality fat. And what is a good quality fat? And that's where it gets confusing for people as well. So a lot of the oils that we've been cooking with for years are not good quality fats. And I'm talking about your safflower, your sunflower, your corn oil, your soybean oils. These are not good quality oils. And we don't want to be heating them up either, because that can cause problems. But these fats are problematic fats for our human body to deal with. But if we're instead using a good quality coconut oil, avocado oil, macadamia nut oil, ghee, butter, olive oil, eating avocados, those are good quality fats. Ditch the margarine, use the butter. if you can do dairy. For some people, you simply can't do dairy, and then you're not going to do that either, right? So it is about understanding your individual body and the right nutrition for you, which is what I teach. I don't teach that everybody eats the same way. I teach that each of us needs to figure out the right way to eat for our body. And that's because each of us has a microbiome that is as different as our fingerprints. Because our microbiome comes from our mother 4 generations back. And no two of us on this planet have ever eaten the exact same food at the exact same time every single day of our lives 4 generations back, right? So we all have different sensitivities to different foods. And I'm not talking allergies, I'm just talking sensitivities, which will trigger some kind of reaction 24 to 72 hours later. You know, I'm very sensitive to caffeine and coffee. I don't drink coffee. And if I have anything with caffeine in it after like 12 o'clock, I'm not sleeping that night. I'm less sensitive to sugar. Other people are really sensitive to sugar, less sensitive to coffee. I have people in my circle that I know that are very sensitive to apples. Well, apples are a healthy food for most, but they're not healthy for everyone. And so that's where we have to move away from, you know, generic diets or fad diets and everybody should do keto or everybody should do paleo. It's about what is finding the right way to eat for your body.
And part of what you do, your services are to help people. You do screenings, right? Or
Yes.
lab work. So, and welcome people that are joining in. It's so nice to see your lovely faces. If you have any questions about eating, health, any type of food questions, you can type them in the chat. So tell us about the food panels that you do. Like if I were, well, we didn't do that part. I did the detox, but I could have gone further, like to see exactly what works for my body. So what do you offer for people for that?
I will absolutely do that, but I want to answer one thing on the low fat before we.
Sure.
And so now when you're going to the grocery store and you're buying milk or you're buying yogurt, you actually want to look for forms that are higher in fat. So don't buy the no fat, low fat yogurt. Don't buy the skim milk, the 2% milk. It's actually better for your body to be buying the whole milk or the 10% yogurt because there's less sugar in it. And then that fat will leave you feeling more satiated. It will help with digestion, slowing digestion down so you feel satiated for longer.
And that goes as well for, like I don't do well with dairy, with milk. So I have oat milk or almond milk, but they have low fat oat milk. So I should the higher fat oat milk. Okay.
And,
but just don't have
read your labels.
Yeah.
Read your labels because the higher fat ones should definitely have less sugar in them. And that's what we're looking for. So yes. And then to answer your question about the food sensitivity panels that test for over 190 different foods across different ethnic backgrounds. And it's testing for whether your body's had an immune response to that food in the last 72 hours. So when you're doing the lab, I might have you eat some foods that you might think are causing you problems so we can truly test for it. And it will show the foods that your body doesn't love you eating. And it will show a different degree of sensitivity for each food. And some foods you might be completely fine with, whereas some foods you might have a high sensitivity to. And then we remove those foods for either 6 weeks, 12 weeks, or 6 months, depending on the degree of the sensitivity, while we allow your gut to heal. Because every time you eat foods that your body's struggling with, it increases inflammation. And remember what I said about inflammation at the very beginning? That ongoing chronic inflammation can trigger cells to turn on disease. Nobody wants that. So if instead we're removing foods that we know trigger inflammation and stress on the body, we can allow the body to heal. And then we start to reintroduce one by one to see how you do and how your body responds. And then everything becomes a choice at that point. You have much greater awareness around how certain foods make you feel. And this isn't an allergy, so it's okay for you to eat them, but you're going to choose to eat them less often because you're not necessarily going to like the way you feel. Or if you have gut issues going on as well that are triggering these sensitivities, if we heal your gut, after your gut's healed, then those sensitivities can go away and you might not have any problems at all. What I hear often from people is, it's not the food I eat because I've eaten this way my whole life. But the reality is that as your toxic load increases, as your gut becomes unhealthy from high stress and poor sleep and antibiotic use and birth control use and all the other factors that can trigger gut health issues, we increase the number of food sensitivities that we have. So it may not have been a problem as a younger child, but now in adulthood, it could be a problem. And so in understanding that and addressing gut health issues, we can resolve all of that. But the other really interesting thing that I notice all the time is that as children, we were very often told to eat everything on our plate because there were children starving in Africa. Yeah. And so as children, we were taught to discount the signals from our own body that were telling us that our body didn't like this particular food, and we weren't heard. No fault of your parents. They were doing the best they could from what they knew. They'd lived through the wars. They'd had, not enough food, right? And they didn't want that for you. But what happens is we turn off our awareness and we turn off our ability to listen to our body. And then what happens is over time, we build up these sensitivities and we have gut issues and we have to correct them in order to undo all of that.
And that's exactly what happened to me. I drank milk my whole life, but I used to get stomach aches and constipation. And from going to a doctor, he said, cut it out. And what was I going to do to replace it? So that's how I tried almond milk and oat milk. And then those issues went away. We just have a couple questions. And thank you. Elliot was asking, what disease did the doctor have that you had? Dr. Cabral, I believe.
Oh, he had a few different ones. I don't know off the top of my head. I would have to look it up. I know he had 3 autoimmune chronic illnesses. And if you were to look up Dr. Cabral or look up the rain barrel effect, you will hear them. Or he also has a podcast called The Cabral Concept, and he tells his story there. It's one of those things I hear all the time that I kind of tune it out. And Graves' disease is coming to me, but it isn't that. Addison's, that was one of them, Addison's disease.
And we're getting a lot of comments. We're getting a lot of comments about cashew cheese. So I will have to try that out.
Interesting. I haven't actually heard of cashew cheese.
And it looks like Michelle Marie actually makes it. Michelle, let's unmute you.
Yeah.
How do you make cashew cheese?
Oh, basically what you do is you soak the cashews overnight, and then, you blend them and then take a cheesecloth and you squeeze out the excess. And Renata actually mentioned making a cashew cheesecake, and it actually clumps really well. So
cashew cheesecake, yum.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds delicious.
Thank you for sharing. Okay. I'd like to move on to, and then we'll talk about the fullness scale, which we want to talk about. Coffee, is it healthy or unhealthy? I know you don't like it. I really tried to get rid of it. And I did for the 3 weeks of the detox, and I felt great. But then I craved it so much. So I did half calf. Well, first I did decaf, and then I did half calf. And now I just have 1 cup in the morning of caffeinated. And it's okay for me. But what are your thoughts on coffee?
So if it's a really good quality, organic, shade grown, like a Peruvian coffee, having, 1 cup, there's some good antioxidants in coffee. So there are some benefits to coffee. Absolutely. It's what you do with that coffee and how much of that coffee that you're having. So it's everything in moderation. If it's a crutch that you can't live without, then I want to know why you can't live without it. What's the underlying root cause of that crutch? Are you needing that because your energy level isn't there? Well, let's look at why your energy level is not there, because you're not sleeping well overnight. You're waking up feeling exhausted. Your brain doesn't turn on until you've had that cup of coffee. There's underlying things going on. It could be cortisol imbalances, et cetera, that are negatively impacting your sleep. It could be a high toxic load and your body's struggling to detox overnight and is waking you up as a result, and you're not falling back asleep. It could be stress. There's so many things. But if that coffee isn't negatively impacting your life and you're drinking a really good quality coffee, then those antioxidants are going to benefit you, right?
Right.
But we are a coffee addicted society. And a lot of the places that we get our coffee from, that coffee is coming packed full of sugar and other toppings. It's got dairy in it as well, which for many people is a problem, even if they don't realize it. Dairy is inflammatory. And, how big is that cup of coffee? It's the same as our plate sizes. Like since the 1950s, a dinner plate was this big, and then now it's this big, right? It's the same with the coffee cup, where it used to be like so high and now it's this high, right? So it all comes down to the quality and the quantity. And what many people don't realize that are drinking a lot of coffee is that it has an 8-hour shelf life or half-life, I should say. So that cup of coffee that you have at 7 a.m. to switch on your brain, half of that caffeine is still running around in your bloodstream at 3 p.m., right? 8 hours later. And then half of that still is running around in your bloodstream at 11 p.m. at night when you're trying to go to sleep. And that's if you've had one cup of coffee. So if you're highly sensitive like I am, you're not getting to sleep if you do that, right?
Right.
Some people are less sensitive and one cup of coffee doesn't make a difference to them, but 4 cups of coffee do.
Absolutely.
They're needing the 4 cups of coffee to get them through the day, but they don't realize that's what's then keeping them awake at night. And so then they have a poor sleep and then they wake up tired and they do it all over again and they don't realize the connection. So to your experience, when people do a detox program with me, I have them come off coffee purely so they can create awareness around their relationship with coffee and how it makes them feel.
And that's what I did because I was having, they're lattes. So I was having 3 lattes a day. Now I just have one in the morning with oat milk. And the coffee amount is very small.
Right.
And a lot of times I do half calf. So that's exactly it, Melissa, is doing that relationship. And that's the same with alcohol. I do want to ask about alcohol and red wine. People say it's good to have red wine.
We
there's
can justify anything if we try hard enough. Right?
But I mean, tomorrow for some of us, it's Thanksgiving. I'm making a sangria for my family, so anyway.
So red wine has resveratrol in it. So again, another really good antioxidant. Does that mean you should be drinking a bottle of red wine every night? No, there's better ways that you can get your resveratrol. But, I am a believer that if you're having 2 to 3 glasses of alcohol a week, that's a nice balance because it's also full of sugar, right? If it's beer, for some people, they have a yeast intolerance and don't realize there's yeast in that. So people can have intolerances to alcohol as well and not realize it. But if we can have it in moderation and have it mindfully, enjoying it in celebration with family and friends, then great, because it comes back to my 80-20 rule. Yes. 80% of the time you feed your body in a way that serves your body, and 20% of the time you don't. When we do it that way, the body can handle the 20% of the time that we're not serving it well. When we do it the other way around, that's when the body starts to break down and we are nutrient deplete and we get out of balance and chronic disease can set in because we're highly inflamed. So we know when we're socializing, we can plan that in our calendar, and then we can plan the rest of our food and drink intake around that for the 80%, where we have a lot more control because we're doing it at home versus when we're out socially, we have less control. But again, 1 glass, and preferably give your body a break in between. So if you're going to have 2 to 3 glasses in a week, you don't want to do it 2 to 3 nights in a row. Give your body that break, that chance to detox some of that alcohol from the night before and have a break, and then the next night.
I also found that I drink a lot of water. I love this.
I love that bottle.
I love this. It tells me, what time. And again, I'm behind. It's 4 p.m. So I have to catch up. But I drink 1 of these a day, or at least 1.5, sometimes 2. But when I have a glass of wine or alcohol, I'll drink an extra glass of water. I don't know why. I just heard that somewhere, and it I think it will help dilute. Maybe in my head, I'm like, so maybe helping to dilute the effect. But anyway,
well, alcohol is actually quite dehydrating.
Right.
So adding that glass of water helps to rehydrate the
Right.
body, which is really important. Again, as I said earlier, our brain is made up of fat and water. And our bodies are, the significant part of us is water. We need water. We lose it through sweat and just going about our days. We have to rehydrate. And most people don't hydrate enough.
Right.
If by the time you're thirsty and you get that signal that you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated, right?
Mhm.
And we need to, on any given day, we should be drinking 50% of our body weight in water. So if you weigh 150 pounds, that's half of that is 75 pounds. So you need 75 ounces in a day. Most people don't get that. And if you weigh more than that, then you need to be drinking more than that. And so you have to then account for the temperature wherever you're living, how much exertion and workout you're doing that's causing you to sweat, to counter that, as well as alcohol intake and coffee intake. Coffee is quite dehydrating too.
So Elliot, thank you for that. Elliot asked a question. I don't know if you want to unmute Elliot, about migraines, and you said peppermints. Are you asking if peppermints help? Let's unmute. Can you unmute Elliot?
Yeah, I'm in the film world, and I used to be in the desert filming with the Bedouins in this hot heat, and I used to get migraines. And they gave me hot water with peppermint, and it relieved my headache. I couldn't believe it. And
Peppermint.
then peppermint,
Yep.
actual peppermint leaves, the leaves.
Right. Yes.
And you boil it with water,
Right.
and then you
So-
drink it. So
Yep.
when I came back to the States, from Israel, you always feel like a headache is coming on. It's not automatic. And what I do is I would keep in the refrigerator bottled peppermint water, and then I would drink that peppermint water, and the migraine would just la la land, gone. So from that point on, I always keep peppermint or grow it and use that as a natural gift from God.
I love that, Elliot. And yes, peppermint is very good at helping with headaches. I use it myself. I use peppermint oil, put it in a diffuser. I can rub peppermint oil on the pain when I get it in my head, because I have suffered with migraines since I was 18 due to hormonal imbalances, which I've largely resolved, but every once in a while I will still get one. And so peppermint oil is extremely helpful. Sometimes I might be getting a headache because I'm dehydrated, and then I will go to coconut water because it's very high in potassium and good electrolytes. And I find that's what my body is needing. Again, with coconut water, you have to be really careful on which ones you buy, because some are loaded with added sugar, and there's already sugar in the coconuts, and you don't need any added sugar. But yeah.
And by the way, this Bedouin who turned me on to it, his great grandfather, that's going back 5 generations, uses the same ingredient, the basic peppermint boiled in water.
There's so much from herbal and plant-based medicine that previous generations did and discovered and knew and practiced that we've lost in recent years, in the last 100 years, because we have a pharmaceutical industry that poo-poos all of that and tells us it's all woo-woo and you don't need that. Here's our chemical drug that'll make you better. And the reality is those chemical drugs, unfortunately, in many cases, are just masking symptoms. They're not getting to root cause, and they're holding you in that disease state. And so that's where holistic health is now starting to a resurgence of people going back to that plant-based medicine because it was so highly effective. And another one that really helps with migraines, Elliot, is ginger and making ginger tea. So taking an inch of fresh ginger and dropping it in the pot and letting it steep.
I have it every morning, ginger.
It's very good for digestion. It's very good as a muscle relaxant. So that's awesome.
By the way, this is the first time I'm hearing you. I mean, I met you on Zula, but I want to let you know that I'm really impressed. And just like Chanel has 5 minutes about science, you should have 5 minutes about the secret of life and food, which is actually extraordinary. And I thank you. And I'm just so happy that I'm here listening to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elliot. That means a lot to me.
Elliot, I'm so glad that you're joining us on Grateful Goddesses.
Yes.
Well, I always thought it was a woman thing, you know.
Well, I'm working on the name change. I know, Michelle, you're making a face, but I will, don't worry. I'm working on a little shift. I'm going to take a poll and see where we're at, but you are grateful. So thank you for coming. And I do want to, my brother's there with my dad. Lower your screen so I can see. There you go. My brother has a question about chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
Dad. My dad is 91.
Amen.
That's awesome. Congratulations, Dad. You're an inspiration.
My dad, by the way, has a piece of dark chocolate,
Mhm.
right, Dad, in the morning with his cereal.
Me too.
Every day.
Right.
In the morning. That's interesting.
Why do you have it in the morning, Dad?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to eat it during the day. I eat it in the morning and it's done.
That's interesting. I like my dark chocolate in the evening instead of dessert. So after dinner, if I want something to just nibble on, then I will have a piece, not a whole bar, a piece of dark chocolate.
Right.
And I nibble on it like a little chipmunk and I let it melt in my mouth. And I just love the flavors and the textures of it. And it has me eat it again mindfully and slowly, so I don't end up eating a whole bar of it. But to your question, Mark, dark chocolate
Mark, you eat a
is that-
lot of chocolate, right?
Wait, sorry?
You like to eat a lot of chocolate.
I'm addicted to chocolate. I love chocolate. Sometimes I steal my dad's chocolate when he's not looking. So the question is, you sort of answered it somewhat already, but is any amount of chocolate acceptable? There's certain types of chocolate that are better than others.
So definitely certain types of chocolates that are better than others. That's always the case with everything. And with dark chocolate, it's better than milk chocolate, and the darker, the better. So when it goes 85% or higher, I consider it actually a health food. But that doesn't mean you get to eat the whole bar. I still say 1 square of dark chocolate and eat it slowly, mindfully, nibble it, let it melt in your mouth. That is a health food because you're getting really good polyphenols from that. You're getting good fiber, you're getting good fats, and you're not getting very much sugar. But if you eat the whole bar, then you're going to be overdoing all of that.
Does that help?
Wonderful. Thank you.
Tanis, you are so funny. You are saying that red wine is a fruit. So I think you said something like that. Yeah, wine is fruit. And then you said something about chocolate being a food group. You make me laugh.
Is that in response to me saying earlier, Tanis, that you can justify anything?
Well, that kind of reminds me of my kids when I would try and give them vegetables and they'd say, well, ketchup's tomatoes.
And interestingly, have you ever read the label of a ketchup bottle and see how much sugar is in there?
Sugar.
Why? Right. And the other place it sneaks in many cases is in store-bought salad dressings.
Mm-hmm.
So I make all my own salad dressings and I might look up recipes online and they will very often include sugar. And so I just make them without the sugar and then decide, do I like it like this? And so far, I always do. And I've never needed to add the sugar. But what we first have to do to be able to get to that place where I'm at is to resensitize our taste buds. Because we do have sweet taste buds. We can't ignore them, but we can get our sweetness from other places, not just processed sugar, including fruits and all the natural fruits and sweet vegetables like carrots and yams and sweet potatoes and spices, cinnamon and cloves and nutmeg are all sweet. So we need sweetness in our life. Absolutely. It just doesn't have to be coming from the hordes and hordes and hordes of processed sugar. Right. And there was some research done, and I don't remember the exact years, but in the UK, I think pre-World War II, people were eating 15 pounds of sugar in a year. And today it's 125.
Wow.
That's insane. That's almost 10 times as much because it's in everything.
Wow. Well, Dad, you're 91, so you were eating well when you were younger. I guess. I had a
and that matters,
Yes,
right?
right.
Because we don't just wake up one day with disease.
right.
It's actually growing in our body over time until we pay attention to the symptom that will drive us to the doctor that will give us a diagnosis, right? And for Alzheimer's and dementia, it can be 20 to 30 years. So I always say it's never too late to start prioritizing your health because the body is incredibly forgiving. And as you experienced, Karen, when you start creating the environment for it to heal, it starts healing very, very quickly and you feel better, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it doesn't matter where you're at today. Start prioritizing your health because your body will start to heal very, very quickly. It's when we just let it go and we don't know what's happening. And then one day we wake up and we do have a diagnosis. And we're like, what have I been doing for the last 5 years, 10 years? If only I'd known better, right? And that's where this health education is so important.
But you can reverse. You can reverse a lot of those things. Okay, looking at the time, I want to get to the fullness scale because that's huge.
Yes.
Can we talk about that?
Yes. So if you think of a scale, a thermometer from 0 to 10, I teach people to eat to a 7 on that scale. Eating to a 7 is what I call eating for energy. Okay. We eat food for energy. That's the whole reason we put it in our mouth is so that our body can break it down, get it to our cells, and it gives us energy. And the only other way we get energy is through sleep. But what happens is our body uses 30% of our energy to break down that food. And that's a healthy digestive system. If we overeat, like we often do at Thanksgiving, because there's so much delicious food on the table, on Christmas, etc. When we overeat and we eat to a 10 on that fullness scale, we've all done it. Afterward the meal, we're rolling around on the couch, we're uncomfortable, our gut hurts, we might have to unzip our pants or go put sweatpants on because the pants with the buttons and the zipper no longer even fit. And we have no energy. And that's because our body prioritizes energy towards the breakdown of food to keep us alive. So all of our energy has gone to break down all of that food that we just ate to a 10 on our fullness scale. But if we had stopped at a 7, then we'd only be using 30% of our energy. We'd still have energy to do other things. We'd feel energized. We'd have good cognitive function as well, as opposed to brain fog, and we wouldn't be feeling uncomfortable. What does 7 feel like to you? So a 7 feels like when you stop eating, you might still actually feel a little bit hungry because your body hasn't fully digested everything that you've just put in. And that's especially the case if you've just wolfed everything down in less than 10 minutes. Ideally, we want to chew our food a whole lot more than we normally do. You could chew every mouthful 20 times as opposed to the 3 to 5 on average. That gets our jaw, which is very, very powerful, working more than we let it. It gets our salivary enzymes functioning better, and it gives the rest of our digestive system a bit of a break, as well as time to start producing stomach acid, et cetera, et cetera. So when we chew more, we slow down, everything happens more easily through our entire digestive tract. And that also allows our satiety hormone, leptin, to be released to tell us, I'm getting full. But when we just inhale it all at once, it doesn't even have time to work. And then afterwards, we keep getting more full, and then we feel overfull, right? But when we stop at a 7, we might feel a little bit hungry, but I promise you, 20 minutes later, you won't feel hungry at all because more of your meal has been digested and you're now feeling fully satiated. So I always suggest to people when they're trying to figure out the right amount of food for them is to serve themselves less, eat it slowly and mindfully over 20 minutes. Notice the time when you finish your meal and, enjoy conversation if you're sitting at the table. If you've still got food on the plate, move that plate away or put a napkin on it so that you're not picking at it, because we know if it sits there, you'll just keep picking at it. And 20 minutes later, if you're still hungry, then have a little bit more. But 99% of the time, we get onto other things and we're not hungry because more digestions happen and we feel full. And so our brain never registers when it's 20 minutes later to tell us we're hungry. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you and I talked too about some of the things that I like to do is like at a restaurant, I will sometimes, if they let me, 'cause sometimes they don't, but I'll say, can I have like my meal and can I have it split in half and put in a to-go box? Or when I'm home, I'll use a small plate and put my food on it rather than the big plate because just the perception of the small plate.
Yeah.
And you also taught me, and I'd never heard this before, but to chew your liquids.
Yes. So chew your liquids and drink your solids. And I know that sounds crazy, but I start most days with a shake. I actually have a shake here because today's a fasting day for me. And when we drink liquids, whether it's shakes, etc., and we're just swallowing, again, we're not using our powerful jaw muscles and we're not triggering the production of salivary enzymes. So all the work is done, by the blender, and then the rest is being done in our stomach and our lower part of our digestive tract. But if we actually take the time to swirl that shake around in our mouth a little bit or that smoothie and chew it a little bit, that gets the jaw muscles going, that starts the salivary enzymes functioning. And so some of the breakdown of that is happening before it even gets to your stomach. And it also lets your stomach know that food is coming, because normally the stomach will know that from the smell. And if we've just made a shake or a smoothie, there isn't a lot of smell to it. So the stomach hasn't had a lot of warning that food is coming. And so swirling it around in your mouth helps. Now, the flip side of that is drink your solids. And what I mean by that is chew your food enough so that it's like a paste and you can literally just swallow it as if it's a drink. And so an example of that is that I love to have people do is take a bite of apple and chew it as many times as you can and count it up. And I've chewed one piece of apple more than 50 times. I don't do that all the time, but to show people I can do that. And the more you chew it, the more juice you extract from it, the more flavorful it is. And then by the time I swallow it, there's almost nothing left to it. And so it's using less energy for the rest of my body to break it down. So I start my day every day with a smoothie because I choose to have that energy for cognitive function or for my workouts instead of it all going to digestion.
Right. And you have healthy things in your smoothie, not just like tons of chocolate, peanut butter, sugar.
Definitely not.
Smoothie. When you say smoothie, sometimes people are like, oh, I'll go to Dunkin' Donuts and get a smoothie.
No, these are homemade smoothies. And
That's
yes,
right.
you can pack them full of, with
Right.
fruit and greens, etc., that you can get really good nutrition into your first
Right.
meal of the day, which again fuels your body, gives you energy for your day. And if you nail your first meal of the day, you're so much more likely to eat well the rest of the day because you can't fall back on that excuse of, okay, I had a crappy breakfast, so it doesn't matter what I eat for the rest of the day, right?
Mm-hmm. And before we end, Elliot, I'm sorry, I missed your question about osteoporosis. What exactly did you want to know?
I have a friend of mine that's going through it, and they've given up hope as far as a cure. And I was wondering if there's any type of natural food ingredient or something to maybe have a miracle like the doctor had or whatever.
Osteoporosis is more of a medical disease rather than chronic illness. So the chronic illness are lifestyle illnesses that we can bring people back from when we make changes to lifestyle, but nutrition always matters, even when mainstream medical says it doesn't. And it's often triggered by nutrient deficiencies. So understanding, calcium levels, and that relates to magnesium levels and all of the minerals and electrolytes is really important. And then when you know where those levels are, you can either use supplementation. And if it's this far along, supplementation would be needed because just food, we're not going to get enough from our food quickly enough. And that would be looking more into orthomolecular medicine and high dose vitamins and minerals for therapy. And you could look into the work of Dr. Andrew Saul, Dr. Abram Hoffer. They're both well known in the orthomolecular medical world, and they might have some more information for you on that. And I can look up their website and send it to you, Elliot, as well.
That'll be great. You're amazing. Amazing.
She is
Well,
the
thank you.
goddess of guided health. Absolutely. And that's
Of
why
life.
of life. I know when we met, I was like, we just connected, and she's been so helpful. And by the way, when I did the detox, she's just like available. I mentioned this before on the show that we had before with you, that I was at a restaurant and I was panicking because I didn't know what to order. And I texted her, not thinking she's going to get back to me right away. And I took a photo of the menu, and I just was kind of sitting there trying to decide. And you said, okay, do this without that, as this without that, and you'll be good. And it was so nice because, the menus are the hardest at restaurants. So how can people reach out to you and contact you for perhaps consultations or to hear more about what you do?
Sure. So my website is yourguidedhealthjourney.com. And in the top right corner, you can contact me or book a session with me. And I always offer a complimentary consult just to understand what your health goals are. And am I the right person to be helping you? And do we make a good team working together? And
Can we
then,
put that in the chat?
Yes, it's in the chat.
Yep. And something I have coming up next week that Lauren's going to help me with is a Boost Your Immune System workshop. Now more than ever, people are wanting to know how to boost their immune system. And again, it's hard to find the correct and trusted information. And when we go to Dr. Google, we're not necessarily getting the right information. So this will just be a free 1-hour workshop. They're both the same. One of them is on December 1st at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. The other one is at 9:30 a.m. Pacific on December 3rd or 12:30 Eastern, to help people understand how their immune system works and what we can be doing to strengthen it, because it is like a muscle and we need to strengthen it. And the problem is our modern day life has us with habits that are weakening it, and we don't even realize it. And so I want people to know that so they can consciously change and make a choice to strengthen their immune system.
Thank you so much for joining us. Elliot, please come back. So lovely to see you. and Elliot, also take a listen. Go to the website, Grateful Goddesses, and look up Melissa's episode. And you can certainly learn more about everything that she does and proper good nutrition and healthy eating.
I hope my mommy buys me a computer one day. Okay.
So let's
If you have a phone, the other thing that I have is I have a Don't Wait for Your Wake Up Call podcast. As I think you said that at the very beginning, Karen. And so that's my platform for educating people on their health and the things that we can all be doing in any given day to be improving our health. That honestly, 6 years ago, I didn't know myself. And as I went through my health coaching training and my integrative health coaching training, I just kept saying, if only I'd known, if only I'd known. And so this is the information that I want to share with more people. And I've been having great fun with my podcast. I'm up to I just recorded episode 46 yesterday. So
Good
you can
job.
check.
46. Is that on the chat, the link?
It's on my website, and then yes, Lauren wrote in the name of it in the chat, and it's on all of the podcast players. So whatever your favorite podcast listening app is, it's there.
And also, just to encourage people who are listening, watching, to contact you to take the toxic load quiz.
Yep.
Because for my brother there, I know you were asking about chocolate. Sorry to put you on the spot, but if you take that toxic load quiz, it can tell you like what you're eating too much of, what you need to, where your load is, so that you can learn about all the toxins in your body.
I just dropped that in the chat for people as well.
Yes, there you go.
It's an aha for people, because so often we tolerate our symptoms and accept them as aging or genetics or seasonal allergies. And they're not necessarily any of those. They are simply your body asking you to do something differently. And when your toxic load increases, you have more of these symptoms. And when we decrease that toxic load, we can reduce those symptoms.
Well, thank you. Let's raise our waters.
Shake.
Or your shakes or your healthy. Oh, I see some smoothies there. to good health and happy Thanksgiving to those who celebrate. Let's all be grateful. Thank you so much for joining us on Grateful Goddesses on GGTV. And we'll see you next week. Bye,
Thank you
everybody.
so much. It's my
Thank
pleasure to
you.
be here, and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Elliot, stay on.
Recording stopped.
Elliot and Mark, stay on. I want to introduce you. Elliot, are you there?
I'm here sometimes.
Okay.